BBC World News, Linda Yueh examines and analyses the business stories and economic trends that are reshaping our world, sitting down with newsmakers and talking business.
Is the commodity boom over? Will food prices continue to rise? Plus, it's Black Friday, the biggest shopping day in America. Will US consumers be spending this year? I'm Linda Yueh, and we're talking business. Welcome to the show. It's been a dramatic run that's lasted for over a decade. Globally, commodity prices such as iron ore, copper, energy have more than doubled since the early 2000s. It's gone on for so long that it's been dubbed the commodity supercycle. Not even a financial crisis could dent the boom. Commodity prices fell then, but recovered rapidly. Prices doubled between 2009 and 2011. But since then, prices have fallen by more than 20%, becoming what is technically called a bear market. Oversupply of some resources plays a part, but the biggest factor is likely the slowing of China. If the commodity boom is over, what will be the impact? One country that has seen the ups and the downs is Mongolia. Is it a precautionary tale for other resource-dependent countries? Joining me today to discuss this are Saikhanbileg, he's currently the Cabinet Secretary and Member of Parliament and has held various top positions in the Mongolian government. Travis Hamilton from Khan Investment Management, a firm providing investment opportunities in Mongolia for global investors. And Tony Nash, Vice President at IHS, an economic and political risk analysis company. Welcome to all of you. Let me start with you, Minister. Mongolia has been rescued 4 times in the past 22 years. The last time was during the 2008 crisis. Are you sure that you've gotten the policies right so far on commodities?
Yes, we're quite sure, because, as you're saying, we experienced up and downs. And Mongolia, because of its historical also past, we experienced quite these kind of things, because we used to be big empire, biggest empire in the world. Also, we used to be a satellite country to the post-communist regime.
Well, focusing on the foreign direct investment, one of the issues is you were not treating foreign investors equally, but now you've changed that policy. Was the policy wrong in the first place?
Yeah, that's why I'm trying to explain is that we experienced a very good period of time. You told that this is our biggest copper deposit area, and related the worldwide known company started to invest, and there was big flowing, and some politicians even started to think maybe Mongolia is the development is guaranteed, and that's why we should develop by ourselves. Why need foreign money? Why we need foreigners? And that's why I started some kind of political games, raised some populists, also national people that we no longer don't need foreign money. But we started to experience some kind of problem, and our inflation rate was the issue. And also without money, there was a biggest issue in social spheres of our life. And that's why people started to understand now, no, without this technology, without this money, without this know-how from developed countries, there is no way for the government to succeed, for the country to succeed. And that's why we started to behave wisely, and we started to treat foreign direct investors as equally as our local investors. And that's why we just months ago enacted new law. It's a new law on investment. And we're no longer going to divide investors into foreign, locals, and we start asking foreign investors, what do you need from us, from government of Mongolia? They say 2 words. It's predictability and sustainability.
So it sounds like it's a policy that you've corrected.
Yes.
But Travis, let me bring you in. Have they actually done enough to reassure you that this kind of policy mistake won't occur again in the future?
Well, I think the legislative advances are welcomed, and it's a great first step. And I think a very key point of the legislation is the fact that it will require more than a majority of 2/3 of government in order to change this investment law. So all members of parliament. Now That is, I think, is a huge bonus, and I think that means we will have stability specifically with regards to this investment law. From my perspective, though, the challenges still remain with investor confidence. And whilst this is a great first step, and there's been some other fantastic legislative progress with the new securities law, which that will certainly help my business in the future. It will give me many more opportunities to invest on the Mongolian Stock Exchange. I think we still need a large catalyst to reignite interest in Mongolia and reignite those investment flows.
Tony, let me bring you in. It sounds to me like there is a first step, but Mongolia has actually made a number of missteps. Do you think they've done enough to reassure and give that confidence that Travis is talking about? Or what would you need to see for you to make a recommendation that Mongolia is actually on the right track?
Sure. I think what we need to see is time. I think the continuity of enforcement, the continuity of implementation of this new investment law is what many investors want to understand, right? So we look at, say, the rights issue around Oyu Tolgoi coming out in January, this big mine, this big copper mine. We look at foreign investment. We see how, say, some of the licenses that were pulled a couple months ago, whether that's redistributed, this sort of thing, under the new mining law. I think foreign investors are looking for a sense of continuity and a sense of consistency in Mongolia. So if we're looking at, say, things like the IPO of Tolgoi, and this is a major mining area, as you all know, I think it's going to be a couple years off before people can really have confidence in that level of investment in Mongolia.
Let me bring you in, Minister, because I think one of the things that investors will worry about is if copper prices or commodity prices continue to decline. It resulted in a rescue just a few years ago. Can you give an assurance that your policies will not result in the fifth rescue in just over 2 decades?
There is no need to invent new bike, and that's why we need to learn from others' mistakes and achievements. And if we compare with other countries, for example, like Chile, and also Botswana in Africa, and also Norway in Europe, and also considering some mistakes because of this Dutch disease, we really understood that we really need good policy on this one. And that's why we're talking about rainbow policy, which everybody knows rainbow consists of 7 colors. And mining is only one of these 7 colors. And we need to find other 6 colors. And we need to talk not only about mining, but also other sectors of economy. And Mongolia is very good on Kashmir, for example, because the quality of Kashmir is best, #1 in the world, Mongolian Kashmir. And if connecting with these Italian big name companies, also innovating our local factories will be very good investment on Kashmir. And Kashmir from 500 million business, it could be easily 5-6 billion business. And next step is tourism. Next step is Mongolia can be very good on meats, for example, organic. And that's why we need to talk about other colors of economy. And when we diversify our economy, I think when rainy days come, as you say, we will be quite confident.
Are you confident, Travis, that they're not going to need the rescue? Because the track record so far isn't very good.
I am confident, and I think that since 2008 there have been a number of very significant changes, which that does give me confidence. I started investing there in 2010, and I continue to invest now, and I think that at the moment Mongolian asset prices have been beaten up horrendously. And I think this is actually a perfect time to enter the market and gain exposure.
Can I just bring in Tony on this? Because I think the issue here is really, to me, this is the key issue. You've been rescued so many times in the past 2 decades, and it's a very resource-dependent economy. Are you confident that Mongolia has gotten it right and won't need another rescue and if commodity prices fall?
Okay, first I have to give Mongolia credit, right? Because they took a very faulty foreign investment policy, and within a very short time, they turned it around, came up with a new law, and came up with a credible way forward. That's very good, right? In terms of commodities, will the bottom fall out of commodities? As an economic forecaster, we don't see the bottom falling out of commodities in the medium term. So we actually think that there is a sustainable market there. Obviously, the shine has come off of some of them, but most of Mongolia's exports go to China. China's going to continue to grow between 7.5% and 8% for the next several years. So there is a market for what Mongolia is selling. And our view is that by 2020, Mongolia's economy will be 3 times what it was in 2011, right? So there's rapid growth, there's sustainable growth. So what we're more concerned about is the implementation of that policy, right? There is, I would say, an uncomfortable overlap of the business class and the political elites in Mongolia. Now, it's a small country. It's hard to avoid that on some level, right? But the transparency has to come about. The transparency of how decisions are made, the transparency of how, say, company leadership is put in place, how political, say, activities are doled out, these sorts of things. And there is some progress there, but that has to continue, right? It has to continue. And I think this is something that the Mongolian government is aware of.
It's not just an issue for Mongolia, it's also an issue, commodities, for countries like Australia, Canada, and Africa. Commodities account for more than 40%, and even as high as 2/3 of the exports of these countries. The impact is also on consumers. For necessities like petrol, utilities, food, there have been double-digit price increases that have squeezed household incomes. Where commodity prices head from here certainly matter. Tony, you started off down this line and you said that you still think commodity prices have a level. Just elaborate. What do you actually mean?
Largely sideways, right? I mean, it's not as if economies are going to rocket off, unless we see major fixed asset investment globally, unless we see a major return to rapid global growth. But when you look at the states which have, the US, which has a good way forward, it's much slower than many people would want. When we look at Europe, which is finally turning the corner, and when we look at Japan, which is finally back on a path to growth, so major economies are moving ahead again. China is accelerating again, and they're announcing major investment projects.
Minister, I think you're actually the best person to tell us what are you banking on in terms of where copper prices are headed, for instance.
And that's why government has started to make also change our policy. For example, when we deal with commodity prices, we may deal only for 1 year, for 2 years at least. And that's why, for example, we made with Chinese part agreement for a very long period of time, for 20 years. And we're going to sell them our coal until 1 billion ton. And this kind of agreements, this kind of arrangement also giving us some kind of protection.
What price are you putting on coal?
But the prices will be, based on this everyday's average things. But
is it stable, like Tony suggesting?
Now we really went to the bottom during the past several months and couple years. Now there is no room to go down, but it slowly will increase.
Tony, I'm going to put this to you in a devil's advocate kind of way. We've been talking about falling commodity prices as if it's a bad thing. I'm looking at my petrol bill, I'm looking at the gas pump, and I'm thinking, wouldn't it be good if commodity prices actually came down? I mean, wouldn't it actually benefit consumers, the world economy, if we weren't paying huge price increases for commodities? Sorry, Minister.
Well, this is what you have in some things like unconventional oil and gas in the US, right? You have supply-induced price reductions, right? And this is helping manufacturing economies like the US. So, some of these supply constraints around rising prices, over the last several decades has really hurt consumers like you, right? There's been more exploration, more availability, and it's been great to have these commodities, but in very real terms, they've been rising, right? And so with the advent of things like unconventionals, we have a step change in the pricing of things like gas. And so does that help people? Well, you know what? I think it does. When we look at things like globalization of manufacturing over the last 30 years, that's been a step change downward in the cost to manufacture goods, right? So are we looking at a step change downward in some commodity prices? Possibly, right? Well, we've seen that since the advent of the global recession, but we're now seeing that in gas prices.
Do you agree, Travis? I mean, you're also a consumer as well as an investor. Do you see sort of prices for consumers? Actually, it'd be a good thing for lots of companies if they were looking at consumers doing slightly better because they're not paying all of their disposable income on necessities like energy.
Well, again, as a single country Mongolian-focused investment house, that's really all we look at.
So it's not good for you, actually.
but to be very honest, as I mentioned, we invest in many sectors of the economy, and fuel prices is a big issue in Mongolia.
Yeah.
There is no local petroleum production at the moment. And that's all at the moment has all traditionally been imported from Russia. There's now imports coming from China as well. But reducing fuel prices in Mongolia would be a huge benefit to many sectors of the economy.
Minister, final word to you. Would it be better for the world if commodity prices went down instead of up?
And Mongolia is we mentioned that it's really resource-rich country, and that's
so
why
not good.
Yes, that's why when commodity prices go down again, it's not good for the country itself. But it's okay, because there is always solution for any problem. For example, going down price on oil, for example, but we really rich on oil shales.
Sure.
And the new line of export is open for our country, That's why any problem has its solution, but we need to prepare well, we need to have good policy, we need to have very big, nice confidence from foreign direct investors. In combination of all these things, of course, that's why we're quite confident that these 3 last years consecutive double-digit economic growth will continue, and also in going to give fruit to other sectors,
Thank you. I'd like to thank my panel, Tony Nash, Saikhanbileg, Kimet, and Travis Hamilton.